Before we jump into getting more detailed in talking about the Civilized Variations, I want to quickly go over one of the main inspirations for making all of these other methods, all of these other techniques. Some of them are going to seem to be pretty far out there, but they're all very practical because they do work. So in science fiction, there are what are called subgenres, and there's many different kinds, but there's actually a few that actually influenced what I was doing. And you may have heard of cyberpunk as a subgenre of science fiction. And some of the most famous ones are like Johnny Mnemonic or actually the Matrix. The Matrix is a big one. If something speaks cyberpunk, it's pretty much the Matrix. You know, where you integrate technology with the human body. And but just so you get an idea, it's actually the last word we're looking for, punk. Because there's another subgenre called steampunk. And steampunk kind of arose out of an idea that in 19th century Victorian England, or it could be actually any kind of period, where they had technologies that actually should not exist. It was very much an industrial time, and they did have steam engine capabilities, but in the subgenre of science fiction of steampunk, steam engines and the workings of steam energy, they make all kinds of contraptions that really can't possibly work. Some of the most famous movies that really detail steampunk are things like there's an animation called Steam Boy, and you may have heard of the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. There's definitely technology in there that really should not exist at that time of human history. So you know, that kind of thing. So and in steampunk too, you'll see all kinds of weird things that are added on, and like gears and cogs and a lot of intricate things that are added on all over the place. And so steampunk is kind of a pretty cool genre of science fiction. So, but steampunk was actually a kind of an influence, because in what I'm creating, what you're going to be seeing are things that really, if you can picture them back in a day, these things like this shouldn't exist. But the thing is, the difference between steampunk and what I do is that my stuff actually works. So in a offhand kind of way, at least to myself, I think of calling it, in my mind, firepunk. So, and there are people out there that do steampunk as a hobby, as kind of a lifestyle, and they'll actually make all kinds of weird contraptions and very creative things, very artistic things. But none of them actually, I shouldn't say none, but a good portion of them don't really work. But they're made to, they're created in the fashion where they have the cogs and the wheels and the gears and all kinds of things that are added onto things that give it the appearance that it is a very intricate piece of machinery that could work. Some things are designed to actually work, but but the thing is that all of mine actually they do work. And some parts are you're going to see, obviously the working parts are made of wood, but there's some parts that are metal. You know, it's almost like a cyborg kind of mixture of something organic and something inorganic together, and it creates a life in a sense. It creates fire. So these people, what I was getting to, these people that actually create these things in steampunk, that's called modding, modding. When you mod something, you make it look like it's very steampunk-ish. When you add all these parts and gears and cogs, and so I kind of call too what I do. I call it fire modding, to be taken from that subgenre. So in my mind, what I do with these civilized variations, I call them civilized variations to set them apart from the primal 8 basics. But in my mind, what I'm doing is fire punk and fire modding. Every time I create a new method, a new technique in this form, I call it fire modding when I'm actually doing it and putting the pieces together and stuff like that. So keep that in mind. I'm going to mention it again later, just as kind of a reminder, but right now I'm going to get more intricate into discussing what these civilized variations are. Okay? Let's keep going. Alright, and finally, we're in a whole new part again. We're on the civilized variations, and what that kind of means is these are techniques or methods that I just kind of made up. So it's all in good fun. All of it is basically kind of just playing around with the variables, which you should now be well adept at knowing, having gone through them with all the primal basics. So everything from this point on is kind of like art of the variation, where everything is just jazz. So everything is just, you know, make it up as you go along kind of thing. So on our equation, everything is basically from left to right. All right, so we're going function, variables, structure. So we know where it is we're trying to get at, and so we're just playing around with the variables, and we're going to create a structure that's completely new, never been seen, maybe never been done. So, but again, all of this it's not just like play. It's it still has a basis in life supporting, you know, the value of life, things like that. So just like our ancestors used friction fire for, it still has that same theme. So along with that, probably one of the best examples I could come up with to kind of understand that is if you've ever seen the movie Apollo 13, another movie with Tom Hanks. So it almost sounds like the Kevin Bacon game, except you know what? Kevin Bacon is in that movie as well. So another great movie with Tom Hanks, but the whole movie is an incredible problem-solving movie. They have so many complications that they need to resolve to come up with solutions for. It's amazing. But the main one is, if you have the DVD, it's chapter 12 called the CO2 Problem. And so their whole, you know, the ship is malfunctioning. They only have enough oxygen left for 2 people. There's 3 people on the module while they're up there in space, and they literally need to figure out how to create a new kind of filter, because one of them is square and another one in the other module is round, and they need to figure out, only with the supplies that's in their module and what they have, to come up with a new kind of filter to fit inside their module. It's just amazing. So literally, like, as they say in the movie, you got to fit like a square peg into a round hole kind of thing. And so it's amazing how these guys just have to, time is of the essence, life is on the line, the clock is ticking, they can only use what's in front of them, and they have to come up with a solution. It's an amazing thing. So, in going in our pad pie kind of procedure, we start with the problem. P is problem. And so you have to kind of recognize what needs to be done. What is the imbalance? What is the need? So what needs to be accomplished in order to balance things in favor of supporting life? So first you have to assess, it's like, what is this? And then you have to diagnose, what does this mean? And then when you finally have an idea of what all that is, you've recognized it, you clarify it, you got to come up with a plan after that. And all your preparations begin there. Then you have to implement and then evaluate. And there's your pad pie. So, except we're doing this from the left to right version of our equation here. What else? Now, even though this is kind of like playing around, I still want things to be clear and sincere in all the areas that I have ever covered with, the problem basics and things like that. So, even though I'm kind of like messing around. All right. So what I want to recommend to you is, if you're going to try these things too, you're going to run into a few complications just like I have. And so my advice is always, if you run into fails, go back to your equation and go back down your list of all the variables. Just go down all 22 and see if there's something that just is not setting right. So some things are obvious, some things just won't look right. But you have to know when a structure looks imbalanced, okay? You have to know when a structure that you're looking at is not functioning. Then you need to figure out that variable and balance that back out in favor of life. So that's how it's done, okay? So another thing I want to mention with working with these variables is the complications. You really have to work toward keeping everything within the Goldilocks mean. That not too much, not too little kind of thing. Because you have to remember too that some of the variables, some of those 22 variables have a dual nature. Okay, they actually have 2 parts, some of them. And some of them can be both at the same time structure and technique. Okay, so for example, axis. Okay, and I did mention this before, but it's good as a reminder. Axis is not only a structure. Okay, your spindle must not only be structurally straight and have an axis to spin on, okay, but you, okay, when you're holding this or stabilizing this, when you're spinning the spindle, okay, it must be straight. So if you're spinning it on an angle, okay, you've created complications because your surface area is not touching your base correctly, only one side is. And now you're getting drift, okay, things like that. And you have a space here, so the temperature is cooling down. And you're not making enough fuel. So you're creating a whole bunch of complications. So remember, some of them have a dual nature. So, and axis is an example. Structure, axis, and technique, axis, where you're actually doing the method and you have to keep that axis in place. Okay? So some of it is in a way not up to you, although you've carved the spindle. But once you carve it, that's it. I mean, you can fix it, but what I'm saying is there's this, and then there's this. Okay? So, and the spindle is only doing what you're making it do. Alright? Dual nature of some variables. Just to kind of throw that in there. Okay? Now, we're going to go through all of these kind of in alphabetical order, but they definitely were not, I did not come up with these in alphabetical order. Certainly not. So, just a quick list of how they kind of were thrown together. One of the first ones was the lathe drill, then the yo-yo drill, the fly drill, Jacob's drill, the vice drill, Alexa's drill, the nano drill, the seesaw drill, the ore drill, the incantation drill, the uber drill, and on and on. I didn't come up with these in alphabetical order, but name-wise, each one of them starts with a letter of the alphabet. So I'm just going to be anal retentive like that and just go from A to Z. And that's only the axis drill ones, because I have some linear ones too that I came up with. And I don't have a whole alphabet because there's a lot less to work with. If you remember from the primal basics, there's only a core 2. So there's not much room to fool around there, play around with, to jazz with. So, all right. Now, many out there who practice friction fire may agree or disagree with, all my variables and Fire Dojo's way of doing things, but that's okay. Everybody has their way of doing things, and you may agree, you may not agree. You may even kind of see things within the variables that I can't see because I'm so close to this kind of way of teaching and my method that it's hard to look outside my own box, even though my way is to kind of think outside the box. It becomes a box in itself, doesn't it? But no one else that even I know of, nobody I know, and I don't think anybody out there else, teaches in the manner of Humphrey's equation method. Dr. Robert Humphrey, who we owe everything to kind of put things in perspective from us. Natural law, life value theory, coming up with variables, and things like that. And it takes years and years and years of whatever it is that you're studying in. It doesn't just have to be friction fire. Whatever it is you're studying that happens to be a life-supporting skill. It takes a long time to figure out what all those variables are. It takes even a long time to even know that there are variables. First of all, first you have to discover that there are variables. First you have to discover that there is such a thing as function, variable structure, and vice versa. All right, and all these things. So it takes a while. And it takes even longer without someone to teach you and instruct you. You may, in a lifetime, you may never get it, understand, because it's basically lifetimes of information. And only an instructor can kind of condense all those things down for you, and in a way that's more digestible. So keep that in mind. All right. So, starting in alphabetical order, our first one is Alexa's drill named after my daughter. All right. And you'll find this one really fun and interesting. Now, the ones I made for my children, I named, there's an Alexa drill and a Jacob's drill. I kind of just had fun with those particular two. I almost made them like music videos, and but you'll get the idea and gist of how everything kind of comes together. All right, the rest I'm a little more serious with, but those I just had fun with. All right, so on to Alexa's drill. I hope you enjoy all of the civilized variations that I call them. All right, let's go.